It was supposed to be a sweet surprise. I woke up early that Saturday, sunlight sliding across my kitchen counter while I packed Ethan's favorite sandwich into a neat little box. I even wrote a note. Thought you could use a break, love. I could already picture his smile, the way his eyes softened when he saw me walk in. I thought, this is what marriage should feel like. Simple gestures, quiet love. Brew and Bloom wasn't far, just a cozy little cafe on the corner that smelled of roasted beans and something cinnamon sweet. I'd heard so much about it. My favorite spot to work, he always said. I parked, fixed my hair in the mirror, and walked in, feeling light, proud even. The barista greeted me with a warm smile, but then the waiter, Mark, his name tag said, looked at me strangely, like he was trying to solve a puzzle only he could see. Oh, sorry, he said, his smile faltering. Are you the wife or the girlfriend? For a moment, I thought I misheard him. Excuse me? I asked, my voice almost polite. He hesitated, eyes darting. It's just, Mr. Ethan usually comes here with a woman. I've seen them almost every week. I just didn't know which one you were. My hands went cold. I smiled, that kind of smile you wear when your heart is collapsing, and said softly, Right, I'm the wife. I carried the coffee Mark handed me, pretending nothing was wrong, though my fingers were shaking so hard I was afraid I'd spill it. Every step toward Ethan's usual table felt heavier, like I was walking through water. The corner seat by the window, his thinking spot, as he called it, was empty. The chair opposite it still held the faint imprint of someone else's visit. My stomach turned. I sat down, clutching the cup like it could anchor me. Around me, people laughed softly, spoons clinking against mugs, a couple sharing a pastry that smelled like butter and betrayal. I kept imagining them here, Ethan and her. Maybe she laughed at his lame jokes. Maybe she listened like I used to. I wondered if he ordered her the same caramel latte he always swore was too sweet for him. The barista passed by and smiled kindly, unaware that her cafe had just become the stage of my heartbreak. I forced a smile back, even managed to thank her, because that's what polite wives do. They hold themselves together, even when everything inside them screams. I looked at the empty chair across from me and thought, so this is where he brings her. The place he says helps him focus. I stayed there longer than I should have, staring at nothing and everything at once. The sunlight danced through the window, catching the edge of my coffee cup, and for a split second, I hated how peaceful everything looked. The world was still spinning, jazz still playing, people still smiling, while mine was quietly collapsing. Funny how betrayal doesn't make noise when it breaks you. It just rearranges who you are. When I finally stood, my legs felt weak, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I placed a few bills on the table, as if I owed them something for the truth I never asked to hear. On my way out, I caught my reflection in the glass door. I didn't see the same woman who'd walked in 30 minutes ago with a smile and a lunchbox full of love. I saw someone stripped raw, stunned, yes, but suddenly aware. Outside, the air hit cold against my face. I held onto the paper bag tighter, the lunch I'd made for a man I wasn't sure I knew anymore. My heart was still racing, but somewhere deep inside, something steadier was forming, a quiet, simmering determination. I wasn't ready to confront him yet, not today, but soon. Because whatever he thought he was hiding, I was going to find it. That evening, I heard his car pull into the driveway, the familiar hum, the soft slam of the door, the whistle he always did when he thought I wasn't listening. I stood at the kitchen counter, cutting vegetables that didn't need to be cut, trying to control the tremor in my hands. When he walked in, he kissed my cheek like nothing had shifted in the universe. Hey, babe, he said. Long day at the office. What's for dinner? I smiled, too calmly, the kind of smile that's stitched on to survive. I thought you were working from your favorite cafe today, I said, my tone light, curious, like I was talking about the weather. He didn't catch the weight beneath it. He grinned, loosening his tie. Yeah, I was. Why? The ease in his voice made my skin crawl. He had no idea that a single question from a stranger had split my world open that morning. "Just wondered," I said, handing him a glass of water. "Who made your coffee today?" He laughed, that careless, nervous kind of laugh that used to charm me. The barista? Why?" I leaned against the counter, studying his face like it was a crime scene. "Because when I stop by, they seem confused. Apparently, you're quite the regular, with company." His smile froze, just for a second. I saw it. The flinch, the panic he tried to bury. He tried to laugh it off, but his eyes gave him away, that flicker of fear he couldn't quite mask. "You must have misunderstood," he said too quickly, his voice breaking just enough to betray him. I didn't respond right away. I just nodded, pretending to accept it, pretending I hadn't watched his confidence fracture for half a second. The silence that followed was thick, not angry, not loud, but heavy enough to crush us both. I walked over, brushed my hand against his shoulder, and smiled like I always did. "Dinner's almost ready," I whispered, as if everything was perfectly fine. Inside, I was somewhere else entirely, replaying the waiter's question, the pity in his eyes, the woman who apparently had my husband's time, laughter, maybe even his love. My chest burned, but I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing it. Not yet. When he turned away, I studied him, the curve of his back, the rhythm of his movements, all so familiar and suddenly foreign. It hit me then. The man I'd trusted for years was living a second life, and I'd just stumbled into it by accident. I wasn't ready to confront him. I needed to be sure. So instead of anger, I chose patience. Because revenge, I realized, isn't fueled by rage. It's sharpened by clarity. Dinner was a performance, and I played my part flawlessly. We talked about his meetings, the weather, a movie we'd probably never watch. I laughed in all the right places, nodded when he spoke, poured him wine like nothing in me was breaking. Every sound, the clink of cutlery, the scrape of the chair, felt exaggerated, like my senses had turned traitor. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled. When he leaned back, satisfied and unaware, I studied him the way a scientist studies something toxic. Careful, detached, fascinated by the lie. "You look beautiful tonight," he said, his eyes warm, his tone soft. And in that instant, I realized how many times he'd probably said those exact words to her. The thought didn't make me cry, it made me colder. There's a strange kind of power in recognizing what you'll never forgive. After dinner, he kissed my forehead and went upstairs, humming. I watched him disappear, that hum echoing like an insult. Standing there in the dim light of our kitchen, I made a silent promise, not of rage, but of reckoning. If he had another woman, I would find her. And when I did, neither of them would ever forget my name. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, the house still wrapped in silence. Ethan was still asleep beside me, breathing evenly, like a man with no conscience. I watched him for a second, not out of love, but curiosity. How could someone look so peaceful while lying in a bed built on deceit? I got dressed quietly, the air thick with that strange calm that comes before a storm. I drove to Brew and Bloom with my coffee thermos and a book I had no intention of reading. I parked across the street, hidden behind a line of cars, watching the door like it held the answer to everything. The city was waking up. Joggers, laughter, the smell of baked bread from a nearby bakery. But my pulse drowned it all out. I was here for proof, not hope. Proof doesn't lie. Hope always does. Hours passed before his car appeared, sleek and familiar, pulling into the same spot it always did. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. He got out, humming, his jacket pressed, his smile practiced, and then, 10 minutes later, she arrived. A woman in a red dress, moving like she belonged to the scene. She walked straight to him. He stood to greet her, that same tender look he used to reserve for me. From where I sat, I could see everything. His hand brushing hers across the table, the way she leaned in, her laughter soft but too familiar. Every touch was a dagger, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I raised my phone and took photos, steady and deliberate. Each click was proof. not pain. I told myself that. Proof, not pain. I watched them share a slice of cake, the same flavor I used to bake for his birthday. The woman wore a thin gold bracelet, her hair tucked perfectly behind one ear. She couldn't have been much younger than me, which somehow made it worse. She wasn't some cliché. She was real, ordinary, the kind of woman who might smile at you in line for coffee without you knowing she's sleeping with your husband. I zoomed in, the ring on my finger glinting in the reflection of my phone screen. The irony almost made me laugh. They looked so comfortable together. No guilt, no hesitation. That was the part that hurt most. He wasn't struggling with his betrayal. He was enjoying it. I texted my friend Emma, my hands trembling but my mind clear. He's here, with her. Her reply came fast. Oh my God, what are you going to do? I stared at them, my lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. Not yet, I typed. Let them think they're safe. I stayed just long enough to see them hold hands. The sight should have shattered me, but it didn't. Not anymore. Something inside me had already hardened, reshaped itself into resolve. They were laughing, heads close, living in the illusion of their little world. Let them. I'd learned something valuable sitting in that car. People who think they're not being watched are the easiest to destroy. When she leaned over to kiss his cheek, I lowered my phone and finally exhaled. My heart didn't race anymore. It slowed, steady and deliberate. I started the car, engine humming low beneath my fingertips. For the first time since that morning at the cafe, I felt power pulse through me. Quiet, grounded, dangerous. I wasn't the broken wife anymore. I was the woman writing the next chapter. Emma called, her voice tight with worry. Rachel, please don't do anything crazy, she said. I looked at the couple across the street, his hand still resting where mine used to be, and smiled. No, Emma, I whispered, watching the betrayal unfold one last time. I'm not going to do something crazy. I'm going to do something perfect. That evening, I set the table like it was any other night. Candles lit, soft music humming through the room, his favorite meal waiting under silver lids. Every motion was intentional, rehearsed, almost tender. I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him unguarded. When the door opened, I didn't look up right away. I just listened. The familiar jingle of his keys, the careless whistle, the scent of his cologne mixed with something floral that wasn't mine. He stepped into the dining room, his eyes lighting up. Wow, he said, laughing softly. What's all this for? I smiled, slow and deliberate. I thought we deserved a little celebration. He frowned playfully. Celebration for what? I tilted my head, keeping my voice even. For you finally choosing between your wife and your girlfriend. The color drained from his face, just like I'd imagined. The silence that followed was exquisite. He tried to recover, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. What are you talking about? He said, voice cracking at the edges. I reached into my bag, pulled out the stack of glossy photographs, and laid them gently on the table like an offering. This is you, I said, at Brew and Bloom. Every Thursday at 4 p.m. You've been very consistent, Ethan. I'll give you that. He stared down at the photos, his hands trembling, the mask slipping inch by inch. He reached for the photos like he could rewrite them with his touch. Rachel, please, it's not what it looks like, he stammered, his voice rising with desperation. That line, not what it looks like, almost made me laugh. It's always what it looks like. I leaned forward, resting my chin on my hand, studying him the way one studies a stranger at a train station. You don't have to lie in my house, I said softly. Not tonight. His lips parted, but no words came out. The room felt smaller, the air thick with his panic. He looked around like there might be a way out hidden between the shadows and the scent of dinner gone cold. I'd imagined this moment so many times, the excuses, the tears, the disbelief. But what I hadn't expected was how quiet victory felt. No fireworks, no shouting. Just peace, the kind that comes after truth finally detonates. I stood, the chair scraping the floor softly, and walked around the table. "You wanted to live two lives, Ethan," I whispered, stopping behind him. "I'm ending both." He turned, eyes wide, as if I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. "Rachel," he started, but I cut him off with a look. "Save it. Every word that leaves your mouth right now only proves what I already know, that you never deserved me." He sank into his chair, shoulders caving under the weight of exposure. "You don't understand," he muttered, as if there was some noble reason behind his betrayal. I almost pitied him, almost. "No, Ethan," I said, my voice steady. "I understand perfectly. You got bored. You wanted to feel wanted. You wanted options, and you thought I'd never notice." His silence confirmed everything. It wasn't guilt in his eyes anymore. It was fear. I walked back to my side of the table, gathered the photos, and slid them into my purse like they were evidence sealed and ready for trial. "You should eat," I said, my tone eerily gentle. "It's your favorite." He didn't move. His fork lay untouched beside the plate. The candlelight flickered between us, catching the edge of his wedding ring, that small circle of metal that meant absolutely nothing now. When I reached the door, I turned one last time. "You taught me something tonight," I said. "Loyalty doesn't need promises, just proof, and I've got plenty." Then I left him there, surrounded by everything he'd ever taken for granted. A warm house, a loving wife, a meal meant for two. I closed the door quietly behind me, not realizing yet that I'd just opened another one, the one that led to his downfall. The next morning, I didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I made coffee, fed the cat, and answered emails as if my life hadn't just split in two. That's the thing about devastation. It burns so hot that eventually it leaves only clarity. I wasn't his victim anymore. I was his reckoning. While he probably spent the morning rehearsing excuses, I was already at my desk, building my case in silence. The first step was simple. I called our bank. Calm, polite, efficient, the way women are taught to be when dismantling men who underestimate them. The funds from our joint account moved quietly into mine. Every dollar accounted for, every transfer legal. I'd been the one handling our finances for years. He'd never notice until it was far too late. I smiled as the confirmation emails came through, proof of independence disguised as routine. Then came the cafe. Brew and Bloom, his office. I called the manager, pretending concern. "I thought you should know," I said sweetly. "Your staff might want to be more discreet. My husband's been conducting extracurricular meetings there." By the end of that call, the manager had seen the photos. And by lunchtime, so had half of Ethan's colleagues, the ones who always met him there for coffee and gossip. His kingdom was crumbling, one latte at a time. He stormed in 3 days later, face red, eyes wild, like a man who'd finally realized the cost of underestimating me. "You ruined me, Rachel!" he shouted, voice cracking somewhere between rage and panic. I stayed seated, sipping my tea, calm as a priest at confession. "No," I said softly. "You did that when you forgot who you were married to." His breath came fast, chest heaving, every ounce of his control slipping through his fingers. He paced the room like a trapped animal, muttering about his job, his reputation, his life. I watched him unravel and thought about all the nights I'd spent holding myself together while he was out, working late. "You'll regret this," he spat, voice shaking. I tilted my head, meeting his glare. "Maybe," I said, "but not half as much as you'll regret thinking I'd never find out." My calm infuriated him more than any scream could. He tried one last defense, a plea wrapped in pride. "I'll start over," he said. "You can't destroy me." I stood then, slow and deliberate, closing the distance between us. "Oh, Ethan," I whispered, almost pitying him. "I'm counting on you to start over. Maybe this time, learn to tell your waiters the truth." His confusion flickered for a moment, then understanding hit, and his face broke. That was when I handed him the envelope. He stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. "What's this?" he asked, though he already knew. "Divorce papers," I said simply. Signed, sealed, and waiting for your signature. You'll find everything in order. Finances, property, even that car you love so much. I left you what you earned." His jaw tightened. "You think you've won?" he hissed. I smiled, small and unbothered. "Winning implies it was a competition. I just stopped playing your game." For a moment, he looked human again. Tired, defeated, hollow. The arrogance that once filled every inch of him had drained away, leaving something pathetic in its place. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. I picked up my purse, turned toward the door, and paused. "Here's the truth, Ethan," I said quietly. "You broke us long before I did. I just had the courage to finish what you started." As I walked out, the sound of my heels echoed down the hallway, each step lighter than the last. The house felt bigger, without his lies in it. The woman who'd walked into Bruin Bloom weeks ago had been soft, trusting, blind. The one walking away now was none of those things. I wasn't the wife anymore, and thank God for that. I was finally the woman I should have been all along. Months later, I found myself sitting in a cafe I'd never been to before, a small place tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. The air smelled like espresso and rain, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. I ordered a cappuccino, the kind Ethan used to claim was too sweet, and smiled when the waiter brought it to me. "Anything else, ma'am?" he asked. "No," I said softly. "This is perfect." I glanced around, couples talking, people working, a woman reading near the window. It all looked so peaceful, and for once I felt like I belonged in that peace. My phone buzzed on the table, breaking the quiet. I looked down, and there it was, his name lighting up my screen. Ethan. The message read, "I miss you." For a second, I almost laughed, the kind of laugh that comes not from humor, but from healing. I didn't respond. I didn't even open it again. I just deleted the message, watched his name disappear like a stain finally washed clean. Then I lifted my cup, the foam still warm against my lips, and thought, he used to order 2 coffees, 1 lie and 1 guilt. I took a slow sip, savoring the taste of peace. Now, I drink mine pure. As I sat there, I realized healing doesn't arrive like a thunderstorm. It sneaks in quietly, in mornings that don't hurt anymore, in coffee that tastes good again, in laughter that isn't forced. I'd spent years loving someone who turned truth into performance, but somewhere along the way, I forgot that I was the story, not the supporting role. The betrayal had burned me to ashes, but maybe that's how women like me are reborn, not as victims, but as fireproof. The waiter passed by again and smiled, and I caught my reflection in the window, hair a little messy, eyes tired but alive. I didn't look like the woman who once measured her worth by a man's attention. I looked like someone who had finally remembered herself. There's a kind of beauty in surviving what was meant to break you. It's quiet, steady, almost holy. I reached into my bag and pulled out a notebook, the same one where I'd once planned his birthday dinners and anniversary trips. Now I filled it with new things, places I wanted to visit, recipes I wanted to try, a list titled, "Things That Are Mine." For the first time in forever, the future didn't scare me. It invited me. Before leaving, I left a small tip on the table. Not out of habit, but gratitude. Gratitude for the silence, for the lesson, for the version of me that refused to stay broken. I stepped outside, and the breeze carried the scent of roasted beans and blooming flowers, a quiet reminder that even endings can smell like beginnings. The sunlight didn't sting anymore. It felt like permission. Walking down the street, I passed a couple holding hands, their laughter echoing softly. Once, that sound would have cut me open. Now, it just made me smile. Because love, I realized, isn't about who stays. It's about who you become after someone leaves. I wasn't angry anymore, just lighter, freer, whole in a way I didn't know I could be. I looked up at the morning sky and whispered to myself, "You did it." Not as a declaration, but as acknowledgement. A small truth finally set free. The woman who once walked into a cafe to surprise her husband had left pieces of herself there. But the one walking away today? She'd built herself from the remains, stronger, wiser, and entirely her own.